So hello everyone, my name is Andrew. I'll be your host this week and I'll be co-hosting with Munir. Munir, if you'd like to say hello.
Hello, everyone.
So like every other Q&A, we'll have you post in the Q&A section. If you're not familiar with the process, there is a Q&A window at the bottom of your screen. There's also a chat window. Chat is just for chat. Please post all questions into the Q&A section just so that we can keep track of the questions that have come in and we can make sure that they're answered. So if you've posted in the chat, just redirect your question to the Q&A. Thank you very much. It just makes sure that we get your questions answered. Chat's enabled, so if you want to just, say hi to one another and share any interesting, findings, by all means do so. And we'll jump right in. First question that has come in is regarding upcoming model that will be both fast like the Planix Pro, but with quality, and then the IMS 5. It's a great question. I don't have any information on that. Always stay tuned to any news, any of the tech updates. We'll let you know of anything when something's coming down the pipeline. But at the moment, nothing to announce. Yes, the Planix Pro is super fast, and yes, the IMS 5 is great quality. That is all I'll say on that one. Same user, is there a way to find the most popular iGUIDE users by province? Great question. So we just have the map, and for now, that's mostly how people will find you. I would recommend utilizing features like Facebook or any other social media platforms to just push for your presence, your online presence. But the map is going to show operators that are working in a specific area, in a certain radius, and I don't believe that it'll prioritize any one company over another due to popularity for iGUIDEs produced.
To add to that, it's ranked based off of location. So it'll show you in a radius which ones are closest to you, depending on where your pin drop is on the map.
Exactly. So a question regarding if we say that ANSI standards are followed for iGUIDE floor plans or detached homes, what standards can we say we follow for apartments/condos? So our measurement standards are compliant with ANSI and RMS. So you'll have to look into which measurement standards you must legally follow based on your province or state, for those of you who are south of the border listening in today. So you'll have to look into what measurement standards you must comply with, but our measurement standards are based on ANSI RMS, and how would I say this? We can provide you with our drafting policies, our drafting standards, and they are compliant with those standards and loosely based off of those standards as well. Furthermore, you can change your standard. So if for some reason you've created an iGUIDE, and let's say you've set it to ANSI and you realize later on that you need to set it to RMS, it's no problem. You can actually change that, and it's a quick toggle between those two options.
There's a new question in from Ron. He says that he's a new iGUIDE user, and he's been extremely pleased with the help received via tickets. We appreciate that. He said, "Oh, Andrew." He name dropped you. He said,
Hi, Ron.
Extremely pleased with you. That's cool.
Yes. So thanks for joining us today, Ron. Yeah, we can definitely do some focus on Stitch. We'll jump back and forth between other questions that come in, and then if needed, we can work on that one-on-one as we discussed.
Do you have any particular questions about Stitch, Ron? Like something you've been having trouble doing, or just on a general?
We've had a number of interactions on a ticket regarding data alignment. So he's produced two properties so far, two iGUIDEs rather, and the alignment was a bit of a challenge at the beginning, and using the auto alignment, it wasn't exactly producing what was expected.
Okay.
I suspect, Ron, that your initial panel being taken outside of the property and then moving inside might have been what was throwing off the alignment. So not that you can't continue to do that, but so long as you select an initial panel that's on the inside of the home, that should more or less resolve the issue. But if you start the auto alignment as on an outdoor panel, it's going to use that as your baseline and try to align data based on that. So what I'd recommend is option one would be to either start from a panel that's inside the home and see if that auto alignment works, or move those outdoor panels to another floor and do the alignment, and then move those panels back and just kind of fit them around the perimeter. That would be really easy. Alternatively, or as an additional option, You can take all of the indoor scans as you need, and then do your outdoor scans. So do the front door at the end, do the deck at the end, do the perimeter of the property at the end, because then all of the data should be auto-aligned while you're on site rather than having to do it in Stitch. And even if you do, and you've taken the panos in a sequence, that would, if you've taken the front foyer, then the hallway that's connected to it, and they all have line of sight to one another, everything should snap into place. But I know that was a bit of a learning curve at the beginning there at that first property, and be curious to see if how the next one goes, how the third property goes. So while I wait for more questions to come in, we're going to explore a bit of line of sight and Stitch. All right, so I'm going to mess up this data and reproduce. I'm sure those of you who have been to these Q&As, you've seen this 100 times over, but for those of you who have not, or those of you who have run into this issue and haven't quite figured out how to resolve it, this is what happens when the auto align feature is disabled. And let's just do this. I probably should have messed this up ahead of time, but that's fine. Just get an idea of what I'm doing here. So I'm intentionally rotating the panos and stacking them on top of one another. The reason I'm stacking them on top of one another is that if you've disabled the auto align feature and the laser data is not going to piece them together like a puzzle while you're on site. And that would pose a lot of problems after the fact, especially if it's a large property, because you're going to get back home or to your office and realize that you've got a lot of work ahead of you, because this just looks confusing. So there's a couple things you can do. All right. So what you can do is you can press the magic wand or number 1 on your keyboard. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the first scan and it's going to attempt to align it with a nearby scan with hopes that there's enough overlapping data that it's making a correct assumption. So it's a calculation. So it's going to ask you, is this correct or in the correct position? Since you were on site, you should vaguely know what the data looks like. You can click yes. And it's going to do that for the next pano. It's going to use enough overlapping data with line of sight, and it's going to place them where they need to go. If you want to speed this process up, you can click yes to all. Note that this is not a cheat code, if you will. You still need to go through the data itself and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. What is this? This is my user pano. You need to make sure everything is where it needs to be. For example, it actually placed that correctly. Okay. One of these is bound to be incorrect. What I would do is if you do the auto align and you click yes to all, start from panel 1 and go from panel 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and so on and so forth. And just make sure that all of those panos are placed correctly. And what I mean by that is, does the laser data look like it fits with the rest? So it should look like a floor plan. And does the visual data match? Because up here, let's say this shows a living room or a garage that's in a similar shape. So the data looks similar, but the visual data looks completely off. You need to make sure that you're confirming that the visual data also matches the surrounding data. So this panel here, I'm looking into the kitchen. You can see the laser pointing into the kitchen. If I click on this panel, which is in the kitchen, and for some reason it's showing a different visual, then we know that one of those two panels is incorrect. You can use adjoining panels to confirm. So you have to play a bit of detective work if the auto alignment didn't do what it needs to do. And that usually only ever happens if the auto align feature is disabled or you don't have line of sight between panos. This property is not exactly the best example of line of sight. It's got some perfectly fine examples of line of sight, but there's more opportunities for a better example of line of sight. So what that could look like is you start off at the front foyer, then you move to the next panel right here. This panel can see this panel. So you can see the green line pointing at the first panel. So you know that these two can see one another. The laser can see the previous placement of the last iGUIDE or the last panel that was taken. It also has scan data here, and this one will also have similar scan data. So that's overlapping data. You'll see here, if I drag this off to the side, all these little dots here, that's the laser hitting the wall. And that's a good amount of data. So it's not too far from the wall, but it's also not too close, which is great. If it was really far away, you would get something that would look more similar to these dots. So this is where it's starting to get a little bit too far. Those are stairs, so that's not really the best example. But this is the wall here. Okay, so you can see on the visual this wall. So the dots are a little bit more spaced out. And that's why, oops, let's leave that alone. That is why this panel here, the dots are all close together. So it's hitting the wall perfectly. So that's a good quality scan. And that's because you have overlapping data. Now, if you have panels that are not exactly snapped into place, you can press 3 on your keyboard. This will automatically place it where it needs to be. So imagine, a puzzle being put together. You press 3 on your keyboard, snaps it into place. This will work if you have overlapping data. If you don't, it's not likely going to work. Okay. Is it important to keep doors to exteriors, backyard, for example, or patios open when scanning home? It's not crucial all the time, but sometimes it does help. So if there's a door where the windows are kind of, let's say there's a curtain over it, if you open it up and just shows that it goes outside, you can, take that scan and then close the door and take another scan, because the closed door version is the one that you want to use during the tour. But the open door one shows us this isn't a closet. I didn't miss anything. There's no missing space here. It's just an exterior door. Typically, they'll recognize an exterior door. But if you open a door for an exterior scan, no harm, unless it's -40 out. That would be rather cold. So it depends. Garage doors, definitely open them. Take a scan with the garage door open, showing that the door leads to the garage and where it's leading, which hallway or area of the home it's leading from. That helps. The visual context helps. And then you can take another one again with the door closed. The closed door version is usually what's displayed in the public view. But it's generally important to keep the doors open for visual context, but for exterior doors, so like you're saying backyard or patios, it's not crucial. But if you're in doubt, it's an extra 20 seconds if you want to take that scan. So I guess I would play on the side of caution and just say, if you're unsure, take a scan, open the door, take a scan, close the door. You can even hide that panel so that no one ever sees it except for our drafting team, because they'll look at it and say, okay, yeah, I see what they've done here. They just wanted to show us that this is an exterior scan or a door to an exterior portion of the home, not a closet that they didn't scan. And then as far as like a patio door, like a glass door, you don't need to open it. But if you are going to want a deck represented on the floor plan, you'll want to have that door open so that you can, take a scan before. And then, of course, you're going to go out there, take another scan just outside the door so we can see the context of placement, and then around the perimeter of the deck. If it's a upper floor balcony or like a very low wall at the top of a building, and you're using the Planex, take the Planex off of the tripod and place it on the ground and do maybe, 4 shots in the corners, not too much in the corner, but, kind of create a smaller square, just so that it captures all of that laser data. And then you can do one more shot in the middle on the tripod for the visual representation of the upper floor. But those small walls, the shorter walls, will be captured because the Planex is on the ground. That won't work with the IMS5, unfortunately, so you just have to lower the camera as much as possible. We have to remove the camera from the Planex and attach it to a telescopic pole to capture roofs. How do we capture those panels into our tour? So when you say you're capturing roofs, are you referring to the exterior, or are you talking about an attic? If you're talking about the roof, you can actually use a drone and include drone panos, which is something separate and we can discuss. If you're referring to an attic, you can keep the Planex together. You don't have to remove the theta. And you just place the Planex into the attic. Now, if you want the attic to be drafted, there's a couple caveats that you have to consider. 1, do you have enough panos? 2, and which more or less goes with number 1, are you hitting flat walls? So if it's all curved walls, it may not be enough data for us to draft. So, you're going to want the Planex sitting on its legs, perhaps not on the tripod, nice and low to the ground, and have it capture any flat vertical wall so that our team can actually draft it. If you want the users to be able to navigate to it during the tour, do the first thing I said, which is have it low to the ground so that it can capture any flat vertical surfaces, because oftentimes, the attics are going to be slanted. But at some portion there may be a vertical wall. So the laser data needs to hit that. So capture lots of panels that hit those flat walls, and then you can put it back on the tripod and capture, some regular panels, if you will. Those would be visible during the tour, but those are not useful as far as the laser data goes, if the walls are slanted. So those will just be for the virtual tour. How would that be used during the tour? We can create a stair gate or a step so that people can click on that and go to the attic if you want. Otherwise, they can use the floor navigation tool. So you can actually have, you'll see on the screen here, you can have main floor, second floor, basement. We can have a floor that says attic or loft or something of that nature. This is a question that is somewhat relevant to Stitch and Survey. So if a door is locked and you don't have access to the room, could we tell the drafting team to do the perimeter of the building anyways? Typically, no. I would say with confidence, your iGUIDE will get rejected or delayed at least if you don't have a scan of a room, especially if it makes up the perimeter of the building. So it's really important that you let your clients know that they need to unlock everything. I know that there's instances, for example, if there's tenants and they're not compliant, they're not letting you into the room. We can't really draft if we don't have data. If you want the measurements to be compliant with iGUIDE standards, we need the data. So the short answer to that would be let your clients know that you need access to all spaces on the property. If they've got a locked closet or locked bedroom or something of that nature, just tell them whatever visually is in there that they don't want displayed, that's fine. That could be hidden. So you can explain to them that you don't need, no images will be shown. It's strictly laser data. Obviously, we still need you to have a panel with the door open so we can see into the room, because you also want line of sight. And then the data you capture in there will also have visual data, but that does not need to be made publicly available. No one beyond yourself and our drafting team, of course, will see that. So let's say a room is not presentable and they've locked it for that reason, just let them know. You still need into that room. You still need to be able to scan it. Otherwise, it's going to delay the iGUIDE. Which floor should we include scans of the stairs? So you're going to want to have a scan at the bottom. So let me use this as an example. Just zoom in here. So you'll see that we have a scan at the bottom of the stairs. And then if we go upstairs, we have a scan at the top. So we can see down. Now, another scan in the middle here would be fine. Generally speaking, the scans that are done in these locations, they're going to be hidden because it creates a bit of a navigation mess. It's just not the greatest, but having a scan there, it just provides that much more visual and laser context, mostly visual. But you're going to want to have a scan at the top of the stairs and then another scan at the bottom. Can you put the lens cap on and get laser data on rooms that are private? Just inform your client that the visual data, so the images, they never need to be made available to anyone. We need the lens cap off so we can have the visual and laser data, because if you're taking a scan of a room, we need to know where that room is placed. And so, in that image, if you've got line of sight, we might be able to look out of that room visually and see, okay, there's a bathroom across the hall and we know where that bathroom is placed. And so now we can place that scan properly. So that image, that panel can be hidden so that, if privacy is a concern, that, you can assure them that no one will see it beyond our drafting team, and our drafting team, they're compliant with privacy. So they're not going to, it's an issue of visual and laser context. Does the laser continue to work with the cap on? Sure. But your iGUIDE is likely going to be delayed if you have the cap on and we don't have visual data. So I wouldn't recommend it. It's mostly an opportunity for education to your client, because they may see you taking the scans thinking you're taking pictures that are going to be available. You just let them know you can hide and show whatever they want. So if you take a scan of a messy room, for example, and they're saying, no, don't go into this room, it's a mess, just tell them, I'm only going to capture the laser data, don't put on the cap. You hide that panel so that no one can see into it, but at least your iGUIDE gets drafted. We have the laser and visual data that we need. If you have to go back to the property and capture another scan after it's been staged, you go back and capture it, and we can update it with that new scan, and no one's the wiser. The public doesn't know. Does it matter if the middle scan stairs is included in the first or second floor? Good question. So using this example, this scan here, you can have it on the second floor, and then this scan down here, it could be on the first floor. It really doesn't, it's not a big deal. Again, you're not going to want to enable these scans. It just creates a bit of a navigation mess. So to give you an example, if you had this scan enabled and I clicked here and this scan up here was on the second floor, then it would actually bring me to this landing. And then if you wanted to go up again, you'd have to create another one of these. We can do all of that. It's just, it's not something we've optimized it so that, you click here, you go down to the main floor. You click here, you go up to the second floor. That's very intuitive. We know that we're going to step on these landings. If you're capturing them, it's because you would like to have the option, perhaps, which you can enable or disable, but it's not something that that you must do. Now, if there's something unique, let's say this landing was a bit larger, there's a little seating area, I would highly recommend you capture it because it's more data. It's not a bad thing if you've got too much data. We can always shrink down and hide things, but we can't add things. Okay, is there a way to increase the size of the floor plan within the tour? Yes. So if you'll see on this example here, the floor plan looks rather small. If you click right here where it says toggle pan and zoom mode, left click on that, using a 3-button scroll wheel mouse, I'm going to scroll up. And where you place the cursor is where it's going to zoom to. So I'm going to place this in the middle of the floor plan, and it's going to zoom in. And when I say, okay, I'm fine with this, or maybe I want to zoom it out just a little bit more, move it out to the side, you're going to scroll up to where it says actions. You're going to click the drop-down menu, and then you're going to click set initial zoom, and then you're going to click save. Now when I load the iGUIDE on the second floor, it's now that size. I'll do the same thing for the first floor just so you can see it again. So you'll see that it's quite zoomed out. I'm going to zoom it in. Let's say I'm happy with that. I'm going to click set initial zoom under the actions tab. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to save. And there we go. So when I load up the iGUIDE, it's going to zoom into whatever I set it to. For whatever reason, if I want it zoomed out, let's zoom it in here. I'm going to do it one more time. So you see it zooms in, second floor, zooms it in a little bit, and the basement, same thing. So you can zoom it in or out based on whatever your client is requesting. Circle back to the tickets here. So Britt, let me know if that answers your question regarding the size of the floor plans within the tour. We're in that final minute, so any last minute questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for today, for this week. And I appreciate you grabbing those other questions that came in. So those of you who got a response from Munir, I appreciate his support today, and I appreciate those questions that came in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, everyone, and we'll see you all soon.